Aloha, folks. Welcome to the podcast formerly known as the Outback Packers. As you can tell by my accent, I am not Nick Gregory. Nick, unfortunately, has had to step away from the pod, but he will be around from time to time. Moving forward, you and Iowa Joe, by his own selection, will be stuck with me for the long haul. Also, we are rebranding as the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. OPE for short, or OPE as in, oh, excuse me, need to sneak past you. Joe, welcome back. Like I said, I guess I'm gonna be your co-host moving forward, but just wanted to check in with you, how you're doing, how you're adjusting, and how how you're handling this mentally moving forward.
Well, we were just talking about this, that it's just kind of like a complete out of nowhere shock with it. And, Nick's got to take his time away because he's got stuff, school and everything else that he's dealing with. So, I completely understand. Just it's one of those things where it just happens so fast. But luckily, Mike, you're stepping up and you're taking over. And, I didn't have to take a break too long to find somebody to record with. But yeah, it's going to be something else, but I look forward to it because you're pretty knowledgeable, and I'm just here to talk. So,
Give yourself a little bit more credit than that.
but
Nah, we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna have a good time. That's the
we
most
are,
important part.
and when I was thinking about trying to find somebody else, you were one of the first ones that popped into my mind because we've had you on the other podcast numerous times, and we always had good conversations with it. And so it just made sense to offer it to you first before, doing the whole American Idol thing for a new podcast co-host.
Appreciate it.
But do you want to tell the people what Ohana Packers Edition is?
So just a fun usage of a little bit of the local language here. So I'm sure most of our audience has seen Lilo and Stitch at some point in their life at this point. So we won't go through the used ad
I
nauseum
haven't. So
line.
what are you talking about?
So Ohana is the Hawaiian word for family. So just kind of bringing you into our Packers fandom Ohana. That's what this podcast, and potentially soon we'll be branching out into other things as well. Not to fully pull the curtain back, but Joe has some big plans for the rebrand, and we're hoping to move forward with that as we go on. But for now, it's mainly the podcast that we rebranded, and like I said, Nick is always going to be here. He is definitely part of the Ohana, but we are moving forward, and we're gonna see what the future has for us going forward.
And I will say the reason we kind of went with Ohana was, if anybody's listened to us too long, Outback Packers too long, I always called the Packers fans family. It was never, they weren't just Packer fans. Everybody was a family because they're always, well, not always. I mean, you got the Twitter trolls and all that, but, most everybody's accepting. The joke is that you go up for a Packers game and just wander the parking lots and you'll get fed for, you'll be full before you enter the stadium. And just because people are friendly and everything else. So it just made sense to go with that, to kind of go with Mike and his Hawaiianness and the Packer family. So, I look forward for, I look towards the future. Hopefully Nick can get back into the fold at some point, but we wish him a lot of luck, and we hope he does well, and we look forward to the future with him.
Yep, absolutely. Hope to hear a good day from him sometime in the near future.
I
I'm gonna
can't
stop
yell and
with the
give him a
crappy
good day, Nick.
Australian accent, and at some point, my local accent. Well, and then that one's not even that good of one, but my local accent might start to pop out a little bit. So here and there, we might start teaching you guys some pidgin English. Because there's nothing better, nothing more Hawaiian or just islander than having contractions for even the most basic of daily functions. But getting back to our Green Bay Packers, getting focused back in on the thing that we're here to talk about. we'll go into the week that was. Green Bay obviously ended up playing the Patriots yesterday in their second preseason game, a game that it has a quote unquote final score, but obviously the game was called. I think for the right decision was made by Belichick and LaFleur to end the game early after the Isaiah Bolden injury. The best news out of that is it sounds like Bolden was able to travel back to New England earlier today. I believe he himself tweeted out that he was doing better and that he was safe to travel. And amidst everything, the even before the Damar Hamlin incident, but obviously since then, just having guys long-term health interests at heart, that's especially for the preseason, it shouldn't be a difference, but obviously when it's regular season or playoffs, the games quote unquote have to get played. But for a preseason game where, yes, I understand that there are back of the roster guys who are trying to make their name and stuff, but for all intents and purposes, by the time the injury happened in the fourth quarter of yesterday's game, or on Saturday's game, I should say, the game for all intents and purposes was over at that point. So I thought Belichick and LaFleur came together, made the correct decision, got their guys off the field, and kind of just, there was enough good stuff on film to that point, and just make sure the rest of the 189 guys on both roster or 179 guys on both rosters were able to, have a relatively clean bill of health getting home and stuff like that. So, especially given that, we had heard many reports that the two joint practices during the week were fiery.
Yeah,
There was high
yeah, to say the
intensity,
least.
and so kind of the quick bird's eye view of it. Wednesday was chalked up as a win day for the Packers. Just overall, it seemed like Green Bay kind of had their hands on the wheel in terms of who was kind of in control of the practice. We had just tons of good news on Love directing the offense against what I understand it's preseason and it's not some of his championship level teams necessarily, but Belichick is still Belichick, one of the greatest defensive minds of in the history of the NFL. And to hear that Love was able to have his as successful a day of practice as he did on Wednesday, that's always very promising to hear. But New England did what any team with pride does, and on Thursday they came back and were like, "Nah, we're not getting mopped 2 days in a row." And Green Bay struggled. Not just Love on offense, but obviously Love is the big topic of discussion going around Packers fans. But it was good to see that after Thursday's practice, they went into the game and Love was able to have some success during the game. I think, he played only 3 drives, but to my eye, and we'll go into more detail on everything, but just kind of giving the cliff notes, I thought of his 3 drives. I thought 2 of them were good drives. Unfortunately, the first one ended in the Myers miss snap, which LaFleur kind of explained out. But I thought the first drive and the third drive looked like he had a good hold of the game plan. He was executing pretty well. And even the second drive, he just had a couple misfires here and there. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good game. Maybe 1 or 2 decisions where he kind of might have put the ball a little bit in harm's way, but overall, I felt like this preseason he's had 18 throws and really only a couple of them have been kind of questionable in terms of his decision making, and that more than anything is one of the things that we wanted to see, especially given what his last year in college was. But Joe, anything that stood out from the practice week that you wanted to go over before we really tap into the game that came up this week?
Well, I just gotta say, and I thought I was wordy.
No, we're gonna the whole 9 yards on that one.
But, I I was trying to think while you were talking on which one it was that during the first fight between the 2 teams during practice that he said. I can't remember the quote fully, but he said something, "Yeah, we had a scuffle," and then one of the coaches came over and asked me if I had thrown a punch, and I said,
Yeah.
"Well, yeah, I threw the
Oh, it
punch," and then I got escorted out of practice, and I know it was one of the UDFA outside linebackers,
yeah. Oh,
and
it's the West Coast kid. I'm pretty sure it's oh shoot, hold on. The one from San Diego State. Hold on. I
Banks or
gotta
something like that,
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sure it was Banks. Yeah.
But it just I found that so hilarious because he just, like, matter of factly was talking about, "Yeah, I admitted that I punched the guy," and the coach said, "Well, you probably shouldn't have done that. You need to come with me," and it's just like,
Yeah, it
that's
it was
amazing.
Keyshawn Beggs.
Yeah, there you
9-man street.
go.
Nat came up to me and said, "Did you throw a punch?" And I'm just an honest, truthful person. That's the way I was raised. And I said, "Yes, sir." Sure enough, I left practice shortly after.
So that but, I in a way, I love it because it shows a fire from the team that we haven't seen for a bit, but then again, it's not good because it happened in both practices, and then you started seeing it at the game, because you were seeing reports even before the game was being played that players were starting to go at each other. And as much as I love the fire, it's you gotta also remember to temper it down so you don't let those things get to you. And, so, it was great to see, you know and another thing is with the and we'll get to it a little bit later, but the injury to Bolden has such a ripple effect now because the Patriots had canceled their next upcoming joint practices with the Titans. So, and obviously they cut the game short. So I think they're really gonna look at that going forward. Sorry, my voice is cracking.
No
um,
problem.
but just going forward, they're gonna be looking at that. I think LaFleur said something maybe instead of 2 or 3 days practices, they'll just have one joint practice and then go right into the game. So, but as for the game, or I mean, as for the participations in the practice, yeah, Love is starting to look better. He's looking more comfortable. Yeah, he's making some issues. I said this with Nick last week after the first preseason game that I think a couple of the missed throws from Jordan were just excitement. And other than the one to Watson deep, it was a well thrown ball. He could have pushed it a little bit further, but it was a well thrown ball, and the safety just made a hell of a play on it. Well, and then the Musgrave one where he overshot Musgrave, well, I think he just got excited because, Musgrave broke free and was wide open, and he just, kind of wild throw it. But then when we get to this game, you're seeing a little bit more better decisions in a way. Yeah, he still had a couple of things here or there that he needs to work on, but while it's not going to be like a short leash, he's going to have like a medium leash on him. You're going to have to live with some of the mistakes going forward. The thing about it is he going to learn from those mistakes? When we get later on to this into the season and he's still making those mistakes, then you've got to kind of question it. But if he starts making mistakes early on and then later on the season you don't see those mistakes anymore, then you got to say, okay, well maybe we got something here. But even though he's been in the league, this will be his fourth year, he's still technically a rookie because he's never had that longevity as a starter. He's had one spot start and then 2 games of extended playing time. That's not much to go off of. And I fully admit, and I've said it all throughout the podcast, I was never a big fan of the pick. I understood the want to do it, but I was never a big fan of it. But, they got their guy and they've got to ride with him. And, this will be the year that they find out. If it goes well, then you're looking at extending him further out and making him your cornerstone. If it doesn't, you got one more year to work with him. And then after that, you got to make a decision. But so far, other than, like you said, Mike, a couple of weird throws here or there, I think he's been doing pretty well considering.
Yeah, I think that's one of those carryovers from practice to the games where it's and that's why I don't make too big a deal about like the reports where it's like, oh, Love has thrown 2 interceptions today, or he's thrown 3 interceptions today in practice, kind of thing and stuff. Because I mean, and I know this isn't like making it okay, but it's like Rodgers threw interceptions in practice, and it's I
Yeah.
always liken it to like there's got to be at some point where, and that's what practice is. You got to have some reps where you're kind of like, I'm just gonna say screw it, I'm gonna try something, and we're gonna see what happens, kind of thing and stuff. And the to me, a nice thing you're seeing about it is that he's doing that in Love is doing that in practice, but you're not seeing him put the ball. He's not YOLO balling it in a game, kind of thing. Kind of an example is the play from I think it was 2 preseasons ago when they played the Bills in Buffalo. He had that nice drive where he was driving the offense down the field, and then he kind of just hucks a ball up into the end zone where he's like falling over, getting tackled, kind of thing, and he just hucks it, and it never has a chance. We're not seeing that kind of play in the games so far. And I get it; he's only had 18 throws so far and stuff, but even like last night, he had the play that it drew the personal foul and all that kind of stuff. But I like the progression we're seeing. And I'm talking more about the game because we can see that we're not going off of people's phone recorded snippets and stuff like that. But it's good to see him going through his progressions, and then and it's nice that he's using his athleticism to break the pocket and run, but he's not doing it every other play. And
Right.
to
Yeah.
me, like, it's good to see that I think more than anything, the thing I like seeing in the games is that he seems to be calm in the pocket and he understands his offense, kind of thing. And that's the growth. Like you said, it's hard. It's going to be hard to gauge in terms of what we should expect, because we have like friend of the pod Jacob Westendorf who's saying he's not a rookie, he's a fourth-year player, so he can't be making certain mistakes. And like you said, Joe, it's a matter to me of he can make it early in the season, but he can't be throwing the same triple coverage down the year. I joked at the time of the pick that if Love hits, it'll look more like how Favre played, because he's
Yeah.
got more of that risk, that gambler mindset than Rodgers, who was very calculated, very risk averse, risk management, risk averse kind of thing. But I'm very pleased with what we've seen, and I just think that I think it was Justice Mosqueda. He tweeted, he's like, or it was either him or Wendell, and they were kind of saying like, okay, at this point, we've seen enough in the preseason that with pretty good certainty, we can say he's not going to be just a total bust, because
Right.
there's enough good O line play around him. There's good weapons. Yes, they're young, but there's talent on offense with him that he's not just going to be a cold bust kind of thing. And it now, what the thing in through practices, through the rest of obviously the rest of preseason is one game at this point, but through this season it's just going to be finding out what is the top end of the trajectory that he's got to him. And is his game going to be is he going to be like a Kirk Cousins level where he's more of a game manager with the ability to have a game here or there kind of thing, or does he have that top his potential is still up in the stratosphere kind of thing, and he's going to keep improving as he goes kind of thing and stuff. But
Well, and you
yeah,
said two key things right there, Mike. You said young offensive weapons. So he's going to be growing with these guys, not being the old man there, or, the young guy and you got the old wily vets in there trying to tell him what to do. But these guys are going to grow together. And then let's face it, this offensive line has been playing amazing. What is the stat that he's not been touched once in the preseason so far? I mean, he's had a couple of times where he's had to jump the pocket, but he's not been taking a hit. The only two hits that he took was the one on when he did run out of the pocket and slid and the guy jumped on him late, and the other one was in the fumbled snap where he dove for the ball and they jumped on him. Those are the only hits that he took. So those two things right there is if we can see that the rest of going into the season, we might, like I said, it might be something. Am I saying it's going to be three straight Hall of Fame quarterbacks? No, it's way too early to say that. But I'm also getting less and less concerned from the quarterback position.
we're going to at least get good play out of it kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. That's the big thing that I've gotten from this preseason, both reading through the practice notes and the the like 5 drives that he's played, is that this is going to be at least serviceable. At worst, we're going to get serviceable offense out of the Green Bay Packers, led by Jordan Love this season. And it really is just finding out where the lid is in terms of his upper end potential. Is That's kind of going to be the field of discovery for the team this season. So it's a hell of a lot better than just the total unknown with Love that we were at. And that was kind of, Westendorf, Morley, and I, we did a thing after the Eagles game last year, and it was kind of like, okay, what does the team do? And my whole thing was, is like, they can't not know what they have in Love going forward, kind of thing and stuff. And it's obviously, it didn't happen because the team turned it around and got itself in position for a playoff run. But like you said, and like I said, and like Westendorf said, he's not a rookie. He's a 4th-year pro. But at the same time, like you said, Joe, he is kind of a rookie because he hasn't taken meaningful snaps in consecutive regular season games yet. Like, it hasn't happened. He might. I think the only reason he's gotten snaps in consecutive regular season games is to kneel the game out. Like, that's it at this point, if anything. But he hasn't played back-to-back games, like snaps that matter, in his whole career in back-to-back games. So, and obviously it's still the preseason. But I think the big thing as the year goes on is, and it's true for athletes at any sport, is, okay, we're going to see what he is to start the season. Then the league's going to adjust, and we're going to see if he can adjust back to the league, to how the league adjusts to him. And that's going to be the real test of, what Love is made of, and, how much better he can look at the end of the season as opposed to the beginning of the season.
Did you hear that, Westendorf? I was right. If you don't like it, fight me.
But obviously, there are 89 other players on the Packers other than Jordan Love.
Way to change the subject on that one, Mike. Way to change the subject.
Hey, this is the Ohana Packers.
Hey,
so we want
family fight all the time. Family fight all the time.
We want to foster a family atmosphere. But other than Love, which obviously that is the big thing coming into this season, but one note you did make, Joe, is Green Bay has gotten back to its roots of just producing an insane amount of offensive line play. Just the level of offensive line play, it seems to be back to that expectation of where it's like, our quarterback is going to be, we're going to have a healthy quarterback because he's not going to get touched much. And I get it. Like, defenses aren't showing a lot in the preseason, but New England ran some pressure packages, and the O-line was pretty good at picking them up and stuff. Yes, I know everyone is...
Not just that, Mike, to interrupt you for a minute.
No.
But they were still playing a lot of their starters too, the same with the Bengals. So it wasn't like he was going up against, second and third string guys. He was going up against number ones.
Yeah.
While they may not be throwing the full playbook at, Jordan Love, they're still giving him pressure and giving him looks, because it's, like I said, it's not just second and third, fringe player guys going after him.
No, absolutely. And, just going as an offense as a whole, that was kind of one of the things that came up this week is, like I said, this is still a Belichick defense. They're still, both very heady and very physical on that side of the ball. And that's kind of where the practices turned, Thursday's practice. That's where New England was kind of able to get the upper hand back on the Packers, is that they just kind of dialed up their intensity, and Green Bay had a tough time matching it. And, it was a little disappointing to read that, on Thursday. It's just like, for me, I'm waking up to a lot of the practice news because I'm like 5 hours behind the team. But, it's a little disheartening as I'm getting ready in the morning, and all I see is every Green Bay report saying like, oh, it's one of those days, another drop. Wide receivers are getting beaten up at the line of scrimmage, all that kind of thing. And we saw it carry over a little bit into the opening of the preseason game. There were, especially that second drive that the offense had, that, they were able to kind of approach midfield, but then you saw like back-to-back plays where like Love had to go through a full read, and then I think his throw was a little high to Musgrave, and Musgrave couldn't quite get to the first down marker. And then on third down, Reed couldn't kind of get away from some bracket coverage, and the throw maybe Love could have been a little better with the ball placement, but the coverage on Reed was very physical, and he couldn't secure the catch on that play, and that drive ended. But it was nice to see that on that third drive, you and I thought LaFleur was calling a good game. And it's hard to say how much they game plan for a preseason game, but
Right.
I appreciated that in that third drive, which ended up being their touchdown drive for the starting offense. I appreciated that LaFleur said, "Okay, you're gonna play physical with us. We're gonna take the top off of you, and we're gonna go deep." And it was good to see them not only do that but connect on a play. The throw, the 40-yarder to Dobbs, which was a play that, as someone
Amazing.
who played wide receiver, it's a great catch. But I wish Dobbs had made it a little easier on himself by running a little bit better route. And my whole thing is like, just use more of the field to your advantage. He and Watson have this tendency to drift on their routes. They drift to the sideline. And my high school coordinator used to always say, "Don't make the quarterback piss in the Gatorade bottle from 40 yards away." Give it. And so what that means is just like, so you're running a vertical, but it's like, keep as much space between you and the sideline as you can. And it's something that I'm just hoping to see Watson, because at the catch point, those two are very, very dynamic, very strong at the catch point. And so it's like, just give yourself that little bit extra room. But it's funny because everyone was like, "Oh, too bad he couldn't get his foot down." And even before he challenged it, I was of the mindset, like, I was like, I wouldn't challenge it because it's the preseason and who cares kind of thing. But I was like, I think he got it. But
You know what's weird is I was saying the completely opposite. The minute it happened, I said challenge it because I said that I was, I happened to be watching the game somewhat with my mom, and she was doing something, and wasn't really paying attention, and I watched it happen. I go, he caught that. That's in bounds. And then they waved it off, and I was like, "No, that needs to be challenged." I said, "There's no way." He had both feet down and he had control, and I I was so happy that LaFleur did decide to
yeah,
challenge it because that's the time to do some of that stuff. Preseason is the time to take the chance on it because it doesn't mean anything except for, the guys fighting for the roster spots and everything. But I was so happy he did because I really did. From the moment it happened, I was just like, he caught that. There's
yeah.
no way he wasn't in. He was in.
My
And
only
like,
question was, when did his right foot hit? Because I was like, he's dragging the left foot in bounds, and I was like, it's just a
yeah.
matter of, did his left foot hit the sideline before his right foot came down? And then they had that angle where they're looking at it from the other sideline. I was like, oh yeah, that's a catch. Like,
Yeah, and I think the other thing that helped was his one hand hit
yeah,
inbounds too.
yeah,
But, it kinda to your point, yeah, and I think even, John Kuhn and, Kevin Harlan were kind of saying the same thing, that he needed to be away more from the sideline. He needed to give his quarterback a little bit more room to operate. And I think he was letting the DB push,
yeah,
dictate the route. And obviously, I've never been a wide receiver, so I'm not going to say anything. But, just from the stuff that I know, that he was letting the DB dictate the route and was pushing him to the boundary.
yeah,
So, that was a good play on the DB's part, and, as much of his amazing catch as it was by Dobbs, he needs to work away from
yeah,
the boundary.
yeah.
So, but
But at least he made it count. Like, that's the
right,
main thing.
yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that my every coach I had was like, "We're gonna tell you how you should do everything, but at the end of the day, just catch the ball. That's all we care."
Right, yeah.
But it was really, like I said, it's really good because, again, like I said, that's the only way that, especially how we're expecting a lot of teams to play the Packers, because they're expecting young quarterback, good O line, good running backs. They're going to try lean on the run game, and other teams are like, okay, we're going to try to take it away. Green Bay Love is going to have to hit some shots early in the season just to keep defenses honest. And you know, that's one of the things that I'm looking for, week one against Chicago is what is Chicago going to do? And everything is kind of building up to that point is and because Chicago doesn't, as much as any Bears fan wants to lie about it, their defense still isn't very good. And
Right.
it's going to kind of be interesting to see, what they do. Are they going to come out in single high and try to jam the run game up for Green Bay, which honestly might not even matter because of how bad Chicago's front seven is right now. But I think that'll be kind of the key in terms of how the early part of the season goes. Because if Love can hit a couple deep shots a game, it's going to open up the offense. And kind of you saw it how it went in the Saturday's game, because they hit that 40-yarder and the rest of the drive it was surgical after that point, because New England did what every defense does after they get hit with a deep ball. They play like one step further off kind of thing, because it's like, okay, crap, we can't play that aggressive anymore because we did get beat over the top. And then the rest of that drive, it was just bing, boom, bam, right down the field, and it
But
ended
I'm
with
gonna
that.
say that Jordan got lucky with 2 throws, the one to Dobbs and then the one to Reed for the touchdown, because he fit those balls where the only person that could get them were the wide receivers. The one on Jaden Reed, I've watched it a dozen different times. I am still amazed on how he fit that ball in there for Reed to get, for the touchdown. So yeah, as much as it was surgical, it also had a tiny bit of luck
Yeah,
just because of the way he was throwing the ball.
yeah. And then so on like the Dobbs play, it's one of those where he's not throwing into double cover, but I agree with you. Like there's a certain amount of luck that goes into a deep ball, because the further down the field the ball goes, the more factors start to come into play. It's less about like, did the quarterback throw an accurate pass kind of thing, because it's like, did the receiver step in a divot 5 yards down the field?
Right.
Was there slightly illegal contact that didn't get called kind of thing and stuff? And at some point there it's a pull and you're just like, can he get there? The read throw, I totally understand what you're saying about that. And that's what confidence, the kind of arm that Love has
Right.
on his
Yeah.
shoulder is. But the thing about it too is it's risky in the sense that yes, it could be undercut, but he still wasn't throwing into a double coverage situation kind of thing and stuff. And it's basically one of those throws that you hit it, you're gonna hit it, or it's going out the back corner of the end zone, because that's just kind of where that's what the positioning on the throw is. But love to see it. Like, pun
Right.
intended,
Yeah.
pun unintended. The throw I actually kind of had an issue with is when they ran the bootleg. I think he was running to his left and he kind of tried to throw it back across his body to
Yeah.
Musgrave. That was the one that I was kind of like, he was kind of open, and if you throw it perfect, it's there and you're gaining. Like, I think you would have converted the first down and stuff. But it's one of those that I'm like, I feel like there's a better throw somewhere. I didn't get a chance to watch the all 22 on that. I believe that's one where someone said Dobbs was kind of breaking free over the top. But at the same time, it's preseason. I don't mind trying it kind of thing and stuff like that. And I
Well,
do
that's
think
one
it
of
is a
those
product.
things that, like I said, that's a good mistake to make early on. But if he's making those mistakes later in the season, then you got to worry about it a little bit. But I
Yeah.
think he's got a little bit of excitement to him when it comes to these tight ends because of what they've been doing in practice. You
Yeah.
know, as much as they are just rookies and we've got to temper our expectations, Musgrave is all kinds of athletic. And to see, like I said, that throw against uh, Cincinnati, he overthrew him. But how many tight ends do you see get wide open like that on a crosser? So I think that once he settles down and stuff like that, and he gets used to these athletic guys, and he says, okay, well, I can put it here because he's a big, tall, athletic type. You know, I but I think a little bit of it is just the excitement from having, and again, I know I sound like a broken record, but if we still see those mistakes later on in the season is when we need to worry more than at the start of the season.
And I do think that that might be something. it might just kind of carry on, because he does seem like one of those guys. It takes him a couple throws to like dial it in and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Obviously, you'd like to see that, work itself out and stuff. But dating ourselves, that was always that was kind of the thing that you always heard from Holmgren when Favre was younger in the early 90s. He's like, I would always call a safe throw early in the game because I knew he was putting it like 3 feet over the guy's head
Yeah.
and stuff. So um
Well, and honestly, you saw a little bit of it with Rodgers early on too, where he'd get a little bit excited because the receiver was broke free, but he had the ability to put that ball where the receiver could get it still, but you could tell when he was getting excited to make that throw over to his open guy. But it's just something you got to work with a young quarterback. And as much as like I said, he's still a young guy. I mean, look at it. What is it? Sean Clifford was just drafted this year and is like 6 months older than Jordan Love, and Jordan Love's been in the league for 4 years. So he's still a young guy. He's still got a lot of that, and it's going to take experience to get him comfortable. I am, one thing I'm glad the Rogers crying did was bring in Tom Clements, because it seems like it's really working to have him with Jordan Love. Between him and LaFleur, they've got two guys that are, doing a damn good job with Jordan. In a way, they're even doing a good job with Sean Clifford. As much as Clifford has maybe a little bit more experience playing per se, because I think he spent 4 years in college, whereas Jordan was only what, 3. So he's got a little bit more experience with it. But he's come in and looked like a game changer. And so yeah, that was one thing that I have to give Rogers credit for crying about, was to bring Tom Clements back in.
sometimes it does work out.
I wish you'd work for me, damn it. But
Instead, you got me. Nah.
um anyway, uh so just going by your notes here, let's take a look at the offensive line, uh because that's been a big deal so far. We talked about it a little bit earlier, where Green Bay's kind of went back to their roots and has invested in the O line a little bit more, which is funny to say because they didn't take, this is the first draft that they didn't take an offensive lineman in like years. And but some of the guys that they've been taking recently are starting to hit. I mean, friend of show Dustin Evely, was talking to him earlier about, maybe taking a deep dive into Rasheed Walker, because Rasheed Walker has come out of, middle field or middle field, center field, and has really stood the test. I mean, I'm pretty sure he played the whole game at left tackle, didn't he?
Or at least the vast majority of it. Yeah, they seem to be giving him a lot of snaps there. And yeah, I know that was kind of one of the surprises going into the game, was like, oh, it's Rashid, not Yosh, who's going to get the start at left tackle tonight. And yeah, from my eye, he had a really good game. Nothing, nothing, nothing otherworldly in terms of like the top end of his play, but you didn't hear his name called, and that's really the second best thing you can hear from an O lineman.
Right.
He's honestly, I've talked to a bunch of guys about it, Brian Mafia a lot, but I still don't understand how he made it to our 7th round pick last
Yeah.
year. Just because, especially in a class where it wasn't a deep tackle class, and you were looking at a guy with a couple dozen starts under his belt at a blue blood school kind of thing
Yeah.
and stuff, and he had talent, and he had upside. And it's just nice to see that it's starting to be realized, and it could just be another steal for Green Bay in that sense. And I know that some people are already doing the like, oh well, if he's able to be the swing tackle, and what can you do, and blah blah blah. they're not trading Yosh at this point. If the time to trade him was before the season, maybe unless there's a deadline deal to be had. But I just think at this point it benefits Green Bay the most to have Yosh's experience on the roster in case of an injury, or if you have to shuffle something else on the line. But I think that having both those guys on roster to be your backup tackles, and they both can just kind of focus on Yosh is just on the right side, Rashid is on the left side, and you kind of just keep everybody's responsibilities more streamlined. I think that's just best for the team moving forward. And more than anything, it's just more found money for this O line. Zach Tom, we don't have to say much because so much has been said for him, but he just had another outstanding game. I know PFF kind of docked his grade because he had the personal foul after the touchdown and like another penalty or some BS like that. But I thought he played an excellent game. Matt Judon was starting across from him for New England, and you didn't hear anything about Matt Judon during the game.
And I
Um,
think Judon even commented on it or something
yeah,
like that, didn't he?
yeah, he basically said like that guy 50, he's good. Kind of like for all intents and purposes, that's basically what he said after the game and all. Um, and and Myers had the bad snap, and okay, so LaFleur came out, and looking back at it, I understand exactly what he's saying. So LaFleur's explanation of it was, as we've all seen, Green Bay has had signals, silent counts, whatever you want to call it, where if they're doing dummy counts and somebody on the defense jumps, we're going to snap the ball. Well, Myers thought the D tackle to his right jumped into the neutral zone, but he hadn't come across far enough. And that's why when he snapped it, Jordan wasn't ready for the ball, but it was errant no matter what. Like it was over Jordan's right shoulder. But looking back at it, it wasn't as bad of it still wasn't on Jordan. So that's why it obviously would have lost 30 yards even if he had recovered it. But the play, it wasn't just like, oh, he thought it was on one and Jordan thought that the play was on three kind of thing. There was kind of there was something under the hood at works there. But I thought other than that, I thought Myers actually, everyone is at his throat and stuff, but I thought Myers had a solid game. The rest of the starting O line had a really nice game. Like you said, Joe, Love had minimal pressure and wasn't touched except for two plays where he went to the ground on his own decision. So that's all you can really ask for as a fan of an NFL team, that your quarterback has a, as they call it, a clean laundry day at the office. So we saw some good run blocking from Sean Ryan when he came in the game later. Still had some little bit rough reps at right guard and pass pro, but he was opening some lanes for Wilson and Taylor in the run game. Good to see him just kind of get his feet under him. And it really just does make the transition from Rodgers to Love so much better that they're getting good offensive line play this season and
Well,
moving
here's
forward, it
one
looks like.
for you. Even Jake Hansen looked like he was having a very
Yes.
good game. And everybody wanted to kill Jake Hansen last year. And for him to come out, and I mean, nobody's ever understood the Jake Hansen pick because you drafted a center who couldn't snap the ball. And but now he looks like he's settling in, and there was no issues with snapping, and he was looked pretty good in the blocking aspect of the game. You know, this team has really missed having that swing guy that Lucas Patrick was, that could swing from guard positions to center. So, maybe if it's finally clicking for Hansen, he's going to stay on the roster for that. It's gonna. I mentioned something like this last night when I was watching the game. I tweeted this, that with all the guys that are looking good and fighting for roster spots, this cut day is going to be the hardest because there's so many tough decisions that are going to have to be made, that, yeah, from our point of view are a little bit rougher, might be easier for the coaches and whatever, but you know from my point of view, at least, there's going to be some rough ones. Now there's
Yeah.
going to be some easier ones, but there's going to be a lot of rough ones.
Yeah. when they get into those fringe positions like linebacker 4, wide receiver 6 and or 7 kind of thing, do they keep a third running back? Those are the ones where it's gonna be tight, and it's gonna be splitting hairs of like, okay, does this guy, does a Malik Heath give us more on special teams than the fourth, than a Jonathan Ford would, kind of thing and stuff like. I think it's going to be those kind of things and stuff, and that always is what makes cut down rough, and especially now that there aren't the intermediate ones. Before they used to go from 90 to 75 to whatever, and then they would get to the 53. Now it's just
Yeah, it's
90 to
just one
53
day.
kind of thing and stuff. And like you said, there's gonna be some easy ones, Royce Newman. But there's gonna be when they get down to players like 58, it is gonna be like they're gonna be splitting hair, and I think partly too, it's gonna be like, who are we confident is gonna sneak through waivers, kind of thing and stuff like that.
Right, and
That
that's the
yeah,
hardest thing is when
yeah,
these guys are balling out in the preseason games that okay, well, that just made it harder for them to sneak through
yeah,
the waiver wire. Like I know the big thing right now, the big discussion is the Malik Heath, Samari Torre, that type of the bottom end of the receiving core because I really don't think they're going to keep 7 receivers. I think with the amount of tight ends that they're going to end up keeping, they're not going to be able to keep as many receivers as they have in the past. So obviously you've got your main ones. You've got Watson, you got Dobbs, and you got Reed. So that's basically going to be your starting 3. Then you've got to start deciding from there. Who's
yeah,
going to be that next. Obviously you don't want to get rid of Wicks because
yeah.
he's shown out. So you would theoretically slot him at 4. Then it's a toss up. Malik Heath, Samari, DeBose. Uh, I who was it that I was having this conversation with? I said that maybe Malik had. I think it was Mafi that Malik had maybe the edge just because of what he's been able to do in the games, whereas DeBose has been relatively unheard. You haven't
Partly
heard from
because of
him,
injury, and
and
yeah,
that's the thing right there is maybe he would be easier to sneak through waivers because of the injuries and not producing, and then you could just redshirt the year and bring him back the next year to compete. Whereas Heath has been producing and might be a little bit harder to sneak through
yeah.
waivers to get to the practice squad. So, you
And then the
know,
interesting one. So I agree with you. I don't think they're keeping 7, but they might technically keep 7 on the opening day roster in the sense that, and it's going to be reliant on, so Wicks, he popped, he had a hamstring injury that popped up in the middle of this game, and it's one of those, like, if it's a minor one, they're probably only keeping 6, but if it's a hamstring injury that's going to require any, that'll preclude any sort of trip to I could see them keep, it'll technically, they'll have kept 7 for, whatever it is, 4 p.m. on that Tuesday after this week's preseason games. They'll have kept 7 wide receivers, and once the calendar flips over, they're putting Wicks on IR, kind of thing, and
yeah,
it's down to 6 kind of thing and stuff. So that would be the only way I see them keeping 7, is if Wicks's injury kind of allows them to make that move, because a hamstring, obviously, hamstring injuries and Green Bay Packers, what goes
yeah, no
together more than
kidding.
those two? But it is one of those where they obviously wouldn't want it to end his season, kind of thing and stuff, because like you said, they definitely, he's shown out in practices and the games, and so they're definitely going to want him in the fold this season. And um yeah, I'm just really excited. DeBose is my guy. Haven't been shy about making that clear. Yeah, it sucks that he was hurt for like the opening part of like all of OTAs and the first part of training camp, so he hasn't been able to show up. But A lot of the returns that you're hearing from the coaching staff and stuff has been really positive. I thought he had a good game on Saturday. He made a couple nice catches on some potential hospital ball. He
Yeah.
and Heath were both catching their fair share of hospital balls from Clifford, but they were making plays out there. And I think it'll, yeah, like you said, it's really just going to depend on what they're looking for in terms of how they want to shape the receiving room that are going to kind of decide those spots. um on the other side of the ball, the most promising thing for me that came out on defense is how much pressure they were able to put on New
Yeah.
England. I know New England's kind of like middle in the pack in terms of offensive line play and stuff, but regardless, it was really good to see my guy from last year, Kingsley Inigbari, just have himself a night. It doesn't matter to, obviously it's good that he's doing against what is projected to be New England's starter line, but the power moves he was putting together to get his 2 sacks, those are the things that um I fully hoped he would be able to do in the NFL. And it's great to see him translate what he did in college to the pros. He even had the Julius Peppers 3-in-1 special: get the strip sack,
Yeah.
recover it yourself, um, all in one special. And it was good to see. It was really good to see that from him, especially because I know Rashawn is back off of PUP, but he's definitely going to be on a pitch count probably through the bye week. And they say it with all, everyone has to remember, I'm sure there's going to be a point where it's like something's wrong with Rashawn. Why are they going to extend him? Blah. Dude is still not, he's, I don't even know if he's necessarily 10 months out of having his ACL repaired at this point, because I think the injury was mid to late October, and I don't know exactly when he had the surgery. So,
Right.
he's right around the 10-month mark, which is still on the very early end of when guys return from that kind of injury. So I think he'll be on a pitch count, but having Kingsley in the mix with Preston, Rashawn on whatever pitch count, having that as your top 3 guys, and then you just have Hollins, who's just a steady, heady pro. That's just the good makings. And I thought Lucas had it's not gonna pop on the stat sheet, but I thought he had a good game last night, doing a lot of the things that they want him to do. He's explosive as hell when they run him on stunt twists with whoever the D lineman is next to him. And I thought he's just doing the things you want to see from a rookie who's frankly going to need some development. But you saw him playing with good effort. He chased the play all the way to the sideline. It was like a quick screen, made the tackle out there. He set the edge well in the run game. And on Kingsley's first sack, or on the strip sack, actually, he would have gotten, I'm convinced he would have gotten the sack if Kingsley didn't win his rep so early, because he's there about a step after Kingsley is at the quarterback on that play. And so um to me, that's all I want to see from him. Expecting him to come in and be a 10 sack player this season was never going to happen. I don't want to say never, but that was just an expectation that was way too rich for anyone to have. And to me, all I care is kind of the same thing with Love, is that we're just seeing him add incremental improvement to his game as the season goes on.
Yeah, and you're not gonna get me to badmouth Lucas Van Ness for much, but
Not trying to.
um, but I mean, there was a couple of times that you could tell he was outrunning the play, so he needs to work on that a little bit better. But yeah, the pressure as a whole was amazing. You had Wooden and Brooks making plays. JJ or Kingsley or whatever he's going by, making was looking tremendous. Uh, as for Rashawn, I've been trying to think about this. I'm wondering if they took him off pup to give him the practice reps just to see where he was at. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did, like, maybe a couple week IR stint, because I think they're still keeping the same IR rules that they had through COVID, where it's only like a 3-week thing and then you're eligible to come back. Um, so it wouldn't surprise me to see that. It wouldn't surprise me to see him end up on pup after the final cut downs or whatever. Um, but it also wouldn't the way he's worked back, it wouldn't surprise me to see him starting week 1 either. But, I'm gonna wait and see with him. Obviously, as Packer fans, we've had our fair share of issues with how players have come back from, ACL injuries. Uh, but, I think the edge position is in a fine place until he gets back. Obviously, it's gonna be even better when he does get back, but I think between Kingsley and Preston and Lucas and the we were just talking about cut downs. I think Brenton Cox could be in that talk too. He's been putting up a lot of good reps. I mean, he's had his fair share just like Lucas had, but he's been putting up some solid reps when it comes down to it. So, you know, it again, this cut down is going to be really rough.
Yep.
And I have to give Cox credit. He's got a bad rap coming because of his issues in college, but you don't really hear about that. And I don't know who it was, but they really need to be slapped. Somebody compared him like to Colt Laerla. It's like this is completely opposite of Colt Laerla. Colt Laerla had friggin' drug problems. Brenton Cox just had attitude problems. And if he can get into and the other big difference is Colt Laerla wasn't putting up any kind of stats in the preseason. Brenton Cox is tearing things up all over the place. So
And he has a
there's
much better position coach to work. I don't know who the hell our tight end coach was at the time that
I don't
Lairla was on the
remember.
roster. I think Rebrovich is going to prove to be one of the like sneaky best hires that LaFleur has got on his staff when it all is said and done. Because the work he's put in with Rashawn the past year, we saw how good Rashawn was playing last year. And Kingsley's rise from a fifth round rookie last year to just how he's looking at this point of this preseason. Preston had one of his better years in Green Bay, just of his career last year too. I think that Rebrovich is going to kind of show he's going to continue to show how good of a coach he is with both adding Van Ness, and if Cox makes it, he's going to add those two to his list of guys that he's worked with, because even before he came to Green Bay, he had a pretty good list of guys that he's worked with in terms of edge rushers who have been productive in the NFL. So,
Well,
and
and the thing that I was always telling Nick was Joe Barry is a linebacker, savant. I've always said that if there was a way that you could demote him to just being a linebacker coach and bring somebody in to be, the defensive coordinator, then this defense could be top notch because Joe Barry, everywhere he's went, has always produced top notch linebackers. I mean, ask Preston Smith. Preston Smith was with him in Washington, and he had some of his better years in Washington. So, if it's never going to happen because I don't see Joe Barry taking a demotion. But if he could just, work with the linebackers and let somebody else handle the play calling, then just to kind of touch on the Joe Barry thing, I think he's been doing better now that he's up in the booth than he is on the sideline. So maybe now it's going to be, something else. Maybe he's
yeah,
finally seeing things clearer.
we saw, yeah, it's been a lot more, it's been a lot different look this preseason than it has the last two seasons. We've seen a lot more pressure looks, more like, I think one of the plays where Valentine got called for PI, they had a 6-man pressure look. Tighter coverage. Of course, we're still going to have those plays here and there where it's kind of loose zone and someone is going to be running free. But part of that is Barry. Part of that is that's where the game is at this point in time and stuff. But overall, I've been same boat. Very pleased with what we've been seeing in terms of the play calling on the defensive side of the ball. Just it seems like guys are more aggressive on that side, and hopefully we'll see that carry over into the regular season. But yeah, it's just so nice that we're seeing this defense able to just turn the heat up on opposing quarterbacks, and they're not able to just like cook their dinner and eat it too in the in the pocket, as our pass rush does nothing for the whole play. So um that's been a continued thing to watch for me this preseason, and I'm very pleased that from the Cincinnati game to this New England game, we were seeing pretty consistent pressure put on opposing quarterbacks. Um, the defensive camp darling Carrington Valentine had his first rough game.
Yeah, that was a
Um,
little rough.
yeah, the penalties, those are gonna come when you play that
Yeah.
physical kind of game. It's gonna just kind of depend on who the refs are, what they happen to see you doing at a given play, and you got to just kind of live with it. And that's the case not just for him, but for fans can't get all up in arms when we get called for a few more defensive illegal contacts, DPIs this season, because they are playing more aggressive on the back end. Those are just kind of that's just kind of products of the function. You want to play more aggressive, you're going to get called for more flags kind of thing and stuff. But I'd rather, obviously in the perfect world they wouldn't be getting flagged, but I'd rather go down being aggressive than, just being cut to death by a million cuts kind of thing and stuff. So um
Well, yeah,
I
and I've been on the Carrington train for a long time now. Obviously, it wasn't before the draft because I really didn't pay attention enough to see see his stuff. But then after the draft, I think I saw like you and Mafi and Dusty and all these other guys talking about Carrington Valentine, and I was like, okay, well maybe I'll pay attention a little bit more to him. And, I'm kinda in the boat with Mel Kiper where I'm really not understanding how he made it all he fell all the way to the 7th round. And, yeah, this last game was kind of a learning process for Carrington, on the one touchdown to who was it
Butte, I
Booty?
think. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, he, uh he got a little too aggressive. He went to play the ball instead of the player.
Yeah.
And, obviously you want him to kind of play the ball because you want to see the interception,
Yeah.
but he was not in the position to play the
Yeah.
ball more than he was to play the player, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Where he
No,
should have batted the ball out of the player's hand more than he should have tried to intercept it. But
yeah, I think he thought the throw was high. Yeah, I had to rewind my DVR because I was like, "What happened there?" Because
yeah,
yeah, it didn't make sense on first view, but then yeah, it's one of those where he thought the throw was high, and so he wasn't in position to make the tackle because his hands were up like this because he was like,
yeah.
"I got a pick," and he's like, "Oh no, no, I don't. I got nothing." And then
And then he pretty much got burnt on it.
yeah,
So it's a learning curve.
yeah,
I mean, again, like I've said throughout, if he's making these early on, you'd rather have him make them early on than wait till later down the line and is
yep,
making these mistakes. But I'm still excited to see what he can do. I think the more he progresses, the more it's going to make this defense even better, just because it's going to allow Barry to use his other weapons in different situations. Uh, and, it's going to help with the pass rush too,
yep,
because if there's nobody open downfield, then the quarterback's got nowhere to go for that pass rush to come through. So, but the big question mark I still have is really the safety room. Yeah, the safeties were kind of playing better this game, but I still think there's huge question marks on it.
yeah.
I think it was when Nick and I were talking to Paul Brettel, he even questioned whether Anthony Johnson was even going to make the cut or not. And I still disagree with him. I think they're going to
He's
keep
gonna
him.
make it. Yeah, I
I
can't see
think
them
it's
leave.
gonna be one of the other guys, whether it's maybe Rudy Ford or, Jonathan Owens getting cut before him, but the way it sounded that, Tavarius Ward was, one of the top-rated safeties this week, so maybe he's finally coming around and getting back to what he was before his major injury, um, but and even Anthony was making some, better plays,
Yep.
and I really think he's gonna be a thumper. type safety if he can channel it. Because, like we keep saying, he's only played safety for 2 years.
Yeah.
So he's still got a steep learning curve. But with what I've been seeing out of, and trust me, this hurts me. He's a Cyclone. I'm a Hawkeye. It hurts me to say this about somebody like that. But um, it just, I think given time, he's going to be a player. And he's another one that I just don't know if he's going to be able to float through waivers, because I think somebody's going to see the potential and take a chance with him. Uh-oh. Oh, we had our first gaff.
I floated away like we don't think that Anthony should.
um, but yeah, I mean, what are you thinking on the safety room?
No, same thing. Like we still don't really have answers. Yeah, I couldn't even tell you who's gonna make the final roster at this point. I Savage is gonna make it. I think Johnson is gonna make it just because I don't think they can chance losing him to waivers. And I thought
Yeah,
he played well. And when you guys had Brettel on, that was before the preseason games. So you hadn't seen him play in a couple games. I thought he had a handful of pretty good plays. He almost came up with an interception at one point. He was the other guy responsible for the Butte touchdown because, like you
yeah,
said, he's got to learn how to. And that's the thing is, it's not even 2 full years. He's had 1 full college year of playing safety, and I believe this is year 2 of like this year will be year 2. He might have been moved like the middle of his second to last year as a Cyclone, but like last year was his first full season playing safety, and this will be his second full season playing safety. So,
that could
um,
be. I don't pay
yeah.
attention to Cyclone football. So.
But I just think that he's shown enough, and like I said, he's at least progressing in the right direction. He's progressing. We're seeing more plays out of him. I know he didn't have that much or that great of a game against the Bengals, but it was good to see him do a little more this week against the Patriots. And with any safety prospect, you're gonna have growing pains, no matter how good of a player they are. How blue chip of a prospect they are, and especially one with as short of a track record as Johnson has. You're gonna need, he's gonna, like you said, obviously you'd like them to be in practice and preseason, but he's gonna need live fire reps, and he can't get them if he's not on the field. So I think at some point late this season he's going to be the guy starting with Savage, but and it's just going to be the bridge to get him there in terms of who is the guy next to Savage to get them there. Yeah, Tavarius Moore, he's a guy, he was a dynamic athlete, had a torn Achilles a couple years ago, and he's kind of working back from it. It's good. Yeah, I kind of think that they're going to keep 4 or 5 of these safety. It's gonna be Savage, Johnson, and then at least 2 of the 3 of Ford, Moore, and Owens. And I do think it's kind of gonna be just matchup driven in terms of who's playing at the starting safety spots to start the season based on who the opponent is. You might see more of like Owens and Ford week 1 for example, because they're playing against Fields, and you're probably more concerned with Fields running than you are
Yeah,
him throwing it kind of thing and stuff. And but then they're gonna play some passing teams the couple weeks after that and stuff, and you might see more of like a Moore, or heck, you might see more of Johnson because you just want his range on the back end kind of thing and stuff. So I think it is going to be musical chairs, both in terms of who makes the final roster
well, and
and
my
who is
thing
going to
is
actually
is
start.
I think it might, and this is going to sound weird, beings that Johnson is a rookie 7th rounder and Owens has been in the league for a little bit. But with the lax rules that they have for the practice squad now, I think it might be easier to sneak Owens onto the practice squad than it's going to be Anthony Johnson. And to your point, if they want to play, have a guy to play the run, they can still call these guys up 2 to 3 times before they have to keep them on the roster. So that could be something they do too. Now, Owens did play well, yes, against the Patriots in the run game. I really didn't get a chance to pay attention too much in the pass game, but he really did struggle in the Bengals game. So I mean, it's kind of a toss up there. Uh, Rudy Ford, kind of the same thing. He was really only brought in to be that special teams type guy, and now he's getting an extended look. So I what was the stat that he hasn't seen us? He didn't play a
Yeah,
single
that was
snap of
yeah,
special teams.
that was an interesting one. Yeah, I saw that floating around on Twitter the day after the game. So that is a interesting one to keep an eye on. Because yeah, you're right. Ford and Owens are kind of cut from the same cloth where they're better coming downhill players than they are ranging on the back end players. Owens he was the one he broke up he had the breakup at the line of scrimmage on the one RPO play. I thought he looked a little more fluid this week than he did because
Yeah.
yeah, like he had that one play against the Bengals where he looked like me trying to make a tackle, looked like his feet were in quicksand kind of thing and stuff. But yeah, it's I know people ask like, what do you think is gonna happen? And I said, I'm not trying to like take the easy way out. I have no idea what they're gonna do at safety because, like I said, I do think that the end game is for it to be Savage and Johnson by the time it's week 17, week 18, that is the plan. And it's kind of just figuring out how you bridge the gap from, rookie installs to being comfortable enough with Johnson on the back end to just have him be the starter. But I don't know if even at that point, if they're going to play a lot of rotation in terms of matchups and stuff. So it is going to be kind of interesting to see what they decide to do. Um, but speaking of guys needing a bounce back, we have good old draft pick Anders Carlson,
Now
who
wait a minute, it's Anders.
ah
We were
Anders.
told specifically by Wes Hodkwitz it was Anders
Wes.
Carlson.
Well, that's what Wes is. That's why we have Wes. Nah.
Um,
Anders. Well, earlier in the week, I was gonna call him Anders, and that's fine because he was not having a good week of practice. But after the game he had, he can be Anders because
the thing about him, and I mentioned this in a tweet that, especially, I think it was right after the Bengals game, he was doing so well, and then he had the miss, and then it went downhill from there. And I think he's in his own head way too much because the minute he missed, it was over. But
yeah.
before he missed, he was just, pounding them out. Now, I really think him hitting that long field goal against the Patriots is really going to go a long way. He's still got a hell of a leg. I'm going to trust in Rich Bisaccia and hope he can really, get him turned around. And not to say that I think he's going to be on a short leash, but I really do hope that they try to sneak somebody onto the practice squad just in case
And
that
I
they
think they
need
will
to.
because I mean, even with Crosby, they've had a guy since COVID. Basically, they've just been like, we're gonna have a guy just in case. I know last year it was because Crosby had like the back and the knee kind of thing
Yeah.
too, but I do think really they're just gonna just every team should really just have a random emergency quarterback, random emergency kicker, maybe even a punter kind of thing or something. But I do think I think I agree with you on both sides that it would behoove them to have a backup plan on the practice squad. But also you've sunk in all the time this preseason into Carlson, and he's got to have some kind of leash on him. Like, yes, you're not going to just let him bomb a whole game away with no repercussions or anything like that. But you've also said like we've drafted this guy in the 6th round, no less. We've not brought competition in this preseason, and we're gonna ride with him kind of thing and stuff. So I think they've kind of shown their cards in that sense, but I do think there is going to be a backup guy more for. I know they'll say more for in the event of like COVID injury, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. But I do think you do need because, like you said, I totally agree with you. He looks like a guy who, especially because Bisaccia's whole thing is he's got these, handful of technical things that we're tidying up kind of thing and stuff. And I do think that does feed into the mental side of, why he's having issues with missing kicks. Cause it's like the Charles Barkley golf swing where it's like I'm thinking of these so many things that I'm like, okay, I've got to get my, when I set up, my feet are this way, and when I approach the ball, I'm stepping here, and my plant foot's got to come down at this oblique angle, and and it's like when like you said, he was drilling them until he missed that first PAT, and then he was like, oh shoot, was it because I thought
Yeah.
I messed up this step? It must have been because I messed up this step, and then instead of just go and kick the ball, it's like he didn't have a chance in hell kind of thing. And you kind of heard that was the case in practice this week because um he had the one in the 2 minute drill where everyone's like, I've never seen a kicker miss a 40-yard field goal the way he kicked it. And everyone and like Todd Varney was kind of saying it on Lombardi's bar. He's like, I'm convinced he made it because I don't understand how he didn't make it. Like, and I think he and Jimmy were kind of like, it had to defy physics not to make that kick. So, it was good. Like you said, the main thing is when it came to game time, he drilled his two PATs and he hit that 50 whatever yarder
Yeah, it
square,
was a long one.
and everyone said, and it, from my grainy illegal stream, it looked like it was good for another 5 to 10 yards, and
Oh,
that's what
yeah,
everyone
there's
in the
no
stadium
doubt
seemed
about
to
it. He's
say.
got a leg to him. I mean, just watching him do his kickoffs, he was nailing them basically out of
Yep.
the end zone every time. So he's got a leg to him. It just, like I said, I'm hoping they get, old Richie will get in there and get him worked on and maybe bring in a couple of sports therapists or two and, get them on the couch and say, all right, we got to get you figured out because you have the ability. You just got to get out of your own head with it. So it's going to be rough. I really am thinking that, but I'm kind of happy the Packers are sticking with their youth movement. They're going to ride it out, one way or the other, and but I think it's going to get to the point that he's going to get inside his head so much that it's going to be a constant battle that they're going to have to keep somebody that they can bring up for a game or two
Yeah.
and just say, hey, just take a break,
Yeah.
just relax, do what you got to do, just sit back and we'll handle it for this week.
Yeah. But yep. So it's been a week, and we got one more week of preseason. Who are we playing this week? This is great radio this week.
Uh, Seattle, isn't it?
Yes, it is Seattle. Oh, the Seahawks.
And
So
it's at Seattle, isn't it?
I believe so. So um Green Bay is gonna get on the bus and I guess they get to do a drive run of the cross country trip kind of thing. I know it's just preseason, but always good to go through getting the production on the move and stuff. And it sounds like from LaFleur's presser today that he expects Love to play at least a series or two this week, because in LaFleur's own words, he's so young and reps will only do him good. And I do agree there that it's just good for him to go through the game prep, go through, the start of the game, get in the flow and stuff. So, and just to kind of keep us, and I'm just excited to see what he's going to continue to do as they continue to go through, game prep, game starts, and, just it's their last dress rehearsal before week one. And so, like we've said a lot in this pod, we like the progression we've seen from him. We just we want to see him just continue to be on that positive trend moving forward. Joe, any final thoughts for this week from you?
No, I'm really not. I'm ready for the season to start. I'm ready for, I'm ready for some games to be played. I think this is the most excited I've been for a season for a long time. That I'm just ready for it to go. Mike, I have to say you've been solid so far this week. So I'm looking forward to many more episodes. Obviously, Nick's shoes are a big set to fill, but I'm looking forward to what we're going to be building with this thing, and let's keep it up. Let's get it to go.
Sounds good. Like I said, appreciate the opportunity. To our Packers fans across the country, across the world, bid you a kind and friendly aloha.